All right, what is going on, guys? We are back home. The cars are home. Both cars are broken. Now, a few people asked me in my comments, like, what happened to the car? And I'm going to explain that right now. I got to do it quick, though, because we're going to Harbor Freight. Before I talk about what happened to the car, I'm going to talk about my cooling issues. Mishimoto sent me a fan shroud, and when they send the fan shroud, it actually comes with these slim fans on it. And they told me that, you know, for my setup, this might not be the best application. Look who's calling me.
Who is it?
Hello, Chelsea.
What's up?
What are you doing?
About to go pick up my car.
Sick, dude. I'm actually filming a video right now, and you're in it.
I'm in it. Holy shit.
Dude, everybody go check out Chelsea DeNofa's Japan videos. They're sick. He jumps cars, works on cars, and talks shit.
And crashes cars.
And dude, you kind of crashed a lot.
Dude, you gotta figure this. I drove more in a week than I did the entire season of FD.
It's a very good point. Okay, so now after Chelsea DeNofa interrupted my vlog here, so these fans were just not enough for the big old V8. If you got an SR, those things work. I actually used these with a 1J and they worked fine. But the V8, man, it's a bitch. So they sent me their new fans, the race fans, that are massive. So my radiator usually sits about here, and that would not work. So now we're gonna have to do some custom fab. I'm gonna have to wire my fans in with some thicker gauge wire. Everything I just did last week, but it's for a good cause. Mishimoto's also sending me a 160 degree thermostat so that it starts flowing the cooling around a lot sooner. And then, thanks to ISR and the guys over at Juku, I made some lines for my oil cooler. So we're gonna make some tabs for that. The oil cooler, got some MPT fittings that go into there, and then I'll run the lines off around the radiator and the oil cooler. There it is right there. That's power steering fluid. It will mount in front of the radiator. Now, what happened to the car? So the car is broken. My transmission is not in the car. The drive shaft's not in the car. The clutch is out of the car. Everything's out of the car. And the reason being, when we installed the transmission and the adapter plate, somehow it just wasn't sitting straight. So basically your input shaft goes into this little bushing. It's a solid bushing. It's the pilot bushing. And it sits in there and it rotates. Okay. Now mine was going in kind of at an angle and it wallowed out the pilot bushing, and then doing that blew out the bearing on the input shaft in the gearbox and also caused uneven wear on my clutch disc, causing hot spots. So I need a new clutch disc, a pilot bearing or bushing, and a bearing and input shaft for a CD09. So I think Injuku's helping me out and they have some extra parts laying around, fingers crossed. So I'm gonna worry about that later this week. I'm gonna get the cooling all dialed in, get this bitch all back together. You can see my engine is just floating here. Fantastic. And yeah, a lot of work, but it's gonna be worth it because we're going to the West Coast and we're gonna go drifting. All right, Harbor Freight. Let's see what they have for wiring supplies. Oh, look at these nerds. I haven't found the relays I need, but I got some wire strippers and some loom to try and clean up the engine bay a little bit. Nothing too fancy, but it'll do the job.
To be fair, I put one pump on it and the freaking cylinder blew out. How can you blame that on user error?
You'll be fine.
It's a backpack?
Blow your arm out.
How do you blow that? Well, my shoulder's jammed.
Do we get that 20% off?
Jack gang. Gucci gang. Now, dude, it smells like brake clean in here because chow. Was this fresh paint? Stop. All right, about to weld some tabs onto my radiator, and my #1 Citrus County fabricator This man here coming out with the welder. This is your dad's shop?
Yeah.
It's a dope little shop. You have a shop at your house too? Nice. It's a cool little rack over there. We're gonna load up the welder and head back to the house. Yes. First things first, I had to drill some holes in the new spot where the radiator sits. This is the old hole where it would sit in there. Here's our new one. We need to open it up a little bit, but we know it does fit and it sits where we need it to sit. And then from there, we're gonna try and reuse these tabs for the removable core support. If we can't reuse these ones, it's gonna be a bummer, but we'll get these holes opened up and then set the radiator back in there and see how it fits. Hold on. Alright. No, not on this side. Alright, so we're trying to double team my car right now. This is an MPT fitting to an AN line, and I'm going to throw some thread tape on it, and I'm going to put it on the block for the oil filter, the relocation area. And I've already made my lines. I made these lines last night. I didn't film it, but we have our line here. It's dash 8. So it's going to come off of the block. It's going to run up to the oil cooler and hopefully keep the oil temps down and overall engine temps down. That's kind of my goal here. So I got my MPT fittings on the oil filter block. Those are nice and snug in there. And then I'm going to run the 2 dash 8 lines off of that around the tube front. And we're going to make a little bracket. Here's my oil cooler right here. We're going to make a little bracket to sit right here, right below the power steering. In a jiffy, he whipped up some tabs, and we didn't have a lot of material here, which actually we pretty much had no material. We had fucking square tubing. But they're thin, and probably for the most part temporary, but they do work, and my radiator is where I want it. And it actually sits higher now, which is nice. This is like probably the highest point. It's almost above the heads, which is nice for bleeding. So the last thing to do to get this all buttoned up here is to chop this back a little bit. That way the headlight brackets meet up and work properly. And then you can see the coolant hose still meets up good. Trying to figure out which way I'm going to route these. Probably to zip tie them to the side of the frame rail here. Ooh, this is warm. That is well warm. Feels nice. After a few hours and messing with some stuff, we moved the radiator forward, but when moving it forward, you know, like the body line of the car kind of comes to an arc, like down, like a point. So as we moved it forward, we ran out of space and less clearance for the radiator cap and our brackets here and everything that held the front core support. So we had to do some modifying to the hood again, which is like, it fucking pisses me off. I hate cutting my hood. But it is what it is, and the radiator sits a little bit higher now, which is kind of nice. Like my cap is almost level with the heads. I'm going to get one of those radium expansion tanks for the coolant. Hopefully that'll help make sure there's no air in the system whatsoever. And then, as we come down here, we've got 2 little tabs, super simple. We're going to drill 2 holes, or 4 holes actually, and it'll just sit there like that. They're super sturdy, thanks to Citrus County's #1 welder. Late night welder. And yeah, I mean, it's coming together. Trying to get all this done before I go to Injuku this week to do the transmission and stuff. So as you can see, there's a lot of exposed metal, and people have been bitching about my bash bar not being painted. Relax, okay, I was busy. Now that all this is finished, all the welding's done, I'm going to take everything out, lights, fenders, radiator, everything back out, and I'm going to paint it. And I'm going to do that probably in tomorrow's video. Rattle can super quick, match the engine bay and the interior.